Hi, and welcome to another episode in the design series. This episode, I wanted to talk about the cost of actually renovating or extending a house. It's something that people ask us often because obviously everyone has these desires to build something in terms of renovating or extending, and of course you want to know, well, how much is it going to cost me to do that? So I thought in this episode, what I would do is talk about those specific costs. In Adelaide, often, and you may have this exact case, is that we often see houses that have, say, the cottage house, which has 4 rooms at the front and a lean-to extension on the back, and people either want to take off the lean-to and build an extension, or perhaps build something inside that actual lean-to. And so I want to give you sort of cost ideas on both elements so you can get a bit of a feel for maybe what you're going to spend. And I'm also going to give you some tips on, what not to do and what to do in the process of going through that. So firstly, let's talk about this. Let's say you just want to do some work where you can keep the existing lean-to, maybe build inside it, maybe put the kitchen in there, maybe take a wall out and things. And we often do extensions or also renovations for customers in that bracket. So, and to budget so that you get a bit of an idea about where you're going. If you want to take out a load-bearing wall, that is a wall that has got some roof structure that's bearing on that wall, then there's a process to go through. So there's some engineering that must happen, or there's certainly a council approval process that needs to happen on that. And then secondly, there is a process where we actually go through and actually insert a beam and then to support the roof, and then remove the wall after that and patch up the wall and the floor surfaces and the ceiling surfaces. So there's that we can do. And I think that that's an important part. If you're going to renovate, one of the things that adds value for customers, especially in today's market, is opening spaces up, creating open plan living spaces that flow and not having these sort of smaller segmented rooms. So that's one of the things that often happens. We look at closing doorways, opening up new doorways, taking out walls, and opening spaces up and making them flow. Having and what goes along with that often is that the floor level in those extensions or the lean-tos will be at a different level. So we sort of look to try and how do we change that. So often we see that we can actually get a renovation done in that manner under the $50,000 mark. Okay, so if you're thinking, well, how much does it cost to do that? If it's inside the existing roof, we're not extending the building whatsoever, and we want to put a new kitchen in, and we want to open up some walls and maybe change a few doorways and things, and maybe even do a little bit of work in the laundry, or maybe retile a bathroom or something, around that sort of mark is where you'd be. Of course, every situation changes, but we often see them coming in around 40, 5 and then 55, that sort of bracket. Okay, so that's, I'll just repeat, so that's like taking out a wall or a series of walls, closing up some doorways, fixing up some surfaces, maybe recladding walls and putting in a new kitchen, and maybe some like laundry or bathroom sort of elements. Not necessarily going and changing a location of a bathroom altogether. That's a whole nother scenario. And of course, it also depends on your existing houses. If your plumbing at the moment is in earthenware, like the clay sort of pipes, and you can check that by going out the back gully and lifting the lid and having a look down there. If that's earthenware, then the plumber will have to take new PVC pipe, the plastic pipe, all the way through to the front of your sewer connection. So there's some added costs that come into that to play. So we need to sort of have a look and exactly understand what that is. If you want to find that out, you can give us a call. We'll come out there all free of charge just to have a look and see and give you those options. So that's if you're renovating inside an existing lean-to. Now, what if you want to add on and add an actual extension where you remove the lean-to and then add on? We typically see in that particular scenario that you might be adding maybe 100 to 150 square metres of probably more like 120 to 150 square meters of, you'd be looking at, we try and work on a sort of cost per square meter basis for looking at that. And so that gives you a good idea around about what it's going to cost. So you can be looking at anywhere from, if it's a simple brick and tile or brick and colour bond house, maybe a more sort of modern style, and you want to add on from there, your costs are going to be somewhere in the vicinity of around $1,700 a square metre. And then if you've got a period sort of home or a cottage with higher ceilings, a bit more decorated items, you'll be up there around about the $2,300 to $2,500 a square metre. So, and of course these costs can vary greatly depending on the sorts of things that you put inside the house, finishes and fittings, tiles, appliances, kitchen types, and the list goes on. But we do, you know, it's very, very typical. Let's say if you've got a cottage with one of those lean-tos and you want to take that off and add an extension on, you know, looking at that sort of $2,100 to $2,300 a square metre will give you a good guide on that. So how do you work that out? Well, let's say you're doing 100 square metres at $2,300 a square metre, it's going to be $230,000. So if you're doing 130 square metres, it's going to be around $290,000, $300,000. So that gives you an idea about, you know, the costs relative to doing that. And of course, the cost of doing an extension or renovation is always going to be greater than building from new. I mean, building from new, you've got an easy set, repeatable process that a lot of the builders, especially the project home builders, can work by. And so therefore, they've got guys who, like for instance, we know a crew that comes in and does the carpentry element, who come in and build a house every day. So they'll come to a slab, it's ready to go, they'll get there, there'll be a whole lot of sticker timbers and things, and they throw the frame up in a day, wall and roof frame, and they're out of there and they're to the next job. And because they know that the jobs are of a similar size, and they know exactly what they have to do when they get there, and it's like repeating the process over and over and over again. When you have that, the cost can be much, much lower. But of course, with renovations, every time you're doing a renovation or extension, there's a whole raft of things that you have to take into account that sometimes people just don't know what they are. And of course, the builders as such, you know, need to account for that. And of course, the price is based on that. So that's the cost element. Now, there is a couple of things that I will sort of talk about right now, some tips about things that you should be wary of. Do not start. If you plan on getting some funding from the bank to maybe do your extension or renovation, don't start your renovation first. Okay, so don't start going into the rooms and tearing a few things down and then you get to the point where you're like, okay, now maybe I'll get some funding from the bank. The reason why I say that is because the bank's going to want to come in and do a valuation on your property, and if your value is lower because you're halfway through, they're only going to assess it on what they see right there and then. So don't start it now and have it in a sort of disarray and then try and get funding from the bank. That's just like, it's just a no-no. And I've seen many clients being stuck in that situation where they're like, oh, I've half started and now the bank's valued it lower than what we bought it for, and all this sort of stuff, and it makes it harder. The ideal scenario is come and value it as exactly as it is, you know, whatever it is right now, tidy it up, and then they come in and they'll value it, and you can actually get an extension or construction type loan that's ideal for you know, doing extensions. And that is, they look at and value what it is currently, and then they look at the value once you've done the extensions or renovations. And that's your best bet for getting finance. Again, hit us up if you need some contacts for that. We have got some great people who work in that area. But secondly, if you want some ideas about extensions and things, again, hit us up. We can actually come out and do all that sort of stuff for you. But hopefully this guide today was helpful in trying to understand, you know, values in terms of where you might be spending, and also the process in terms of how you go about it. So till next time.